Ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing our live broadcast today, MIP at the EOP, the Executive Office of the President. We are in the Eisenhower office building, executive office building, right next door to the White House. And we're honored to be here as we discuss the anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. And in that context, we'll continue our conversation with several individuals who are working in civil rights on behalf of the administration, trying to secure our civil rights. The room we're in is the Secretary of War's conference room, because this was the War Department. It used to be called War Department before it was called the Defense Department. So we are now in the Secretary of War conference room. And right here to my right is the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Karabo Jackson. My brother, how are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me, Robert.
It's good to have you. Refresh my memory, man. Where are you from?
Born in Chicago.
Okay.
But moved around a lot.
Moved around a lot? Okay. All right. All right, bro. Donald Trump, I think he said it the other night, did more for black jobs, black unemployment than anybody. But that's not true, is it?
So I'm not going to wade into politics, but as a matter of the facts,
right.
If you look at the data, this administration under President Biden has done really, really well for black employment. So just to give you a few numbers, I think right now the unemployment rate for black Americans is 6.1%.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of this presidency, in the past, we had the lowest record low unemployment, a number we have never seen. It was about 4.7%, something around there. And we had the longest stretch of about 18, 19 months where the unemployment rate for black Americans was at 6% or below, which is something we had just not ever seen since those data are out there. And just to give you some context, if you look at the previous 4 years between 2016 and 2020, the unemployment rate for black Americans was about 8%. And if you look at the 4 years before that or the 8 years before that, it was closer to 11%. So we are actually seeing historic lows in terms of the extent to which black Americans who are looking for jobs actually have jobs. We're seeing historic highs in that regard. So black Americans in terms of getting employment are doing really, really well. So as a matter of, if you want to make a comparison, the past 3 years under Joe Biden have been very, very good for black Americans relative to what it has been in the past. Now that is not to say that there's not work to be done. Now, one of the things that people often point to is the average unemployment rate for black Americans historically is always below that for white Americans. Now, again, this is one of those things that means there's work to be done, but the gap between the unemployment rate for white Americans and black Americans are narrower now under President Biden than have been under any previous president. So I would say that is just absolutely not true.
Yeah. And the gap has been more narrow than it's been in history. Right.
That's right.
The unemployment rate has been lower. In fact, I think at one point, was it last year? It was the lowest it had ever been.
That is correct.
Under this administration. So those are gains being made. Where does the Council on Economic Advisors come in on that? What advice do you all give to help that to happen and for it to continue?
So one of the things that we always want to stress at the council, and I'll just for the administration more generally, is we want to have a strong economy. So one of the things, President Biden has mentioned this, that what you want to do, what he has wanted to do, what we have wanted to do as administration is really ensure that we have what's called full employment. Full employment is a scenario where the unemployment rate is low and the economy is adding jobs. And what that does is it makes it very, very unaffordable. It's not unaffordable for employers to discriminate against workers and not hire workers for reasons that are unrelated to their productivity. So someone who may want to look for a job or is looking to hire for someone for a job, when they see someone and they decide, I'm not going to hire them based on their skin color, it's very hard to do that when you have a tight labor market where you have a lot of jobs that are out there and the unemployment rate is low. In that point, it becomes unprofitable to behave in that way. So one of the things we can do is to ensure we have a strong economy where you have a tight labor market that generates full employment, and that narrows the gaps between groups that historically don't do particularly well when the economy is weak. When you have full employment, those gaps narrow, and that's exactly what we've seen. And basically, that's also consistent with the fact that we've seen record low unemployment for black Americans under this president. One thing I just want to emphasize is, sometimes people look at those numbers and they're sort of skeptical, and they say, well, well, maybe it's because people aren't working and that the economy is so bad they're not looking for jobs. And actually, that is inconsistent with the facts. We're actually seeing very, very high levels of labor force participation in general, so that a lot more
Right.
people are looking for jobs and more people are looking for work. And the fraction of the Black population that is employed, the gap between that for Black Americans and white Americans, we call that sort of the population employment ratio, is as small as it's ever been. So again, under this president, we've seen gaps narrow both in terms of employment, but also in terms of unemployment, which is a good thing.
What about Black men in particular? Well, first of all, just let me say this. We know, for whatever reason, Black women were the hardest hit during the pandemic. But what about Black men? There's all this conversation on social media. What are we doing for Black men? I don't like to separate us, but I'll ask you, aren't things going pretty well for Black male unemployment?
Yeah, so the unemployment for both Black men and Black women are low in historic terms. But you're absolutely right. There is a bit of a difference there in the sense that Black women are doing relatively better than Black men. This is not something, again, this is something that is not new, but this persists right now.
Right.
But the gaps are smaller because we have this strong economy.
The gaps are smaller than they've ever been.
That's right. That's
Right,
exactly right.
Wages. What about wages? What progress have we made in terms of wages?
That's a great question.
And folks, we just need to know. So this is Civil Rights Act. 60 years ago, and we know what we didn't have in terms of jobs and wages. So we're talking about how far we've come in 60 years. But talk to us about wages.
Wages. So, if you look at wages, overall, if you look at the overall economy, wages are growing. And one of the things I really like to highlight is wages are growing faster than prices, because that's the thing people often like to raise. Wages are growing faster than prices. The most recent data report we had, both the PCE and the CPI, which are the two measures of inflation, came in at 0, which is to say prices were flat. At the same time, wages are growing. That means that overall people's purchasing power is increasing. Their paychecks are going farther and farther. Recently, the council, we released a report looking specifically at the wage gains made by Black Americans. What we found was, particularly in 2023, this is the most stark. The wage gains made by Black Americans outpaced that of prices and outpaced that for all the other groups. So relative to white Americans, Black Americans' wages went up even faster. Such that the purchasing power improved. So that actually, during that period, you actually saw a narrowing of the wage gap between white Americans and Black Americans. That gap has been relatively consistent in 2024, but the gap's narrowed in 2023.
Wages for Black Americans went up more and at a faster pace, you said?
That is correct. In 2023 than for white Americans. That's exactly right.
Yeah, people don't know that.
That's right. It's one of those things that, oftentimes people talk about the economy, and we forget about the fact that when you have a lot of people who are employed, you have more people employed, more people who are in the labor market, who are looking for work, are able to find work, and their wages are going up, and they're going up faster than prices are. People often don't think about those things in the context of like what the government is doing, but by maintaining a strong economy, by this sort of the leadership and stewardship of this administration, we've had a strong economy. We've had a string of months, over 2 years of unemployment below 4% nationally, which is something we hadn't seen in over 50 years. So we've had a strong economy with a tight labor market, which is generating gains for those at the bottom end of the distribution. I just want to also add, if you look at previous times of economic strife, you look at other previous recessions, oftentimes those recoveries were, we've heard the term jobless recovery. That was not the case under the recovery under this administration.
Right.
We've grown many jobs. And since 2023, there have been about 600,000 jobs for African Americans alone. So I just want to highlight the fact that more people are working, more people who are looking for jobs are getting jobs, and their wages are going up. One other thing I want to highlight is, we looked at the report to try and get a sense of why wages are going up. And one of the reasons is obviously that sort of a rising tide lifts all boats. That's
Right.
part of it.
Right.
But another part of it is that we're looking and we find that African Americans in particular we're doing a lot of what we call occupational upgrading, occupational upskilling. So if you look at the sort of the jobs that Black Americans had in 2019, and you look at the jobs that they have in 2024, Blacks are slightly more likely to have jobs in sort of managerial roles and less likely to have jobs in sort of lower paying professions. So we're seeing some occupational upskilling consistent with just sort of moving up the occupational ladder, which is just a sign of progress. So it kind of shows you that when you have a strong economy that's generating opportunities for everybody, those who potentially historically may not have done so well are starting to move up the ladder, and that's a good thing.
Wealth building.
Yes. So wealth building is something we've seen as well. One of the things that we talked about is we just did some analysis, thinking through, taking a look back is where have we come since the passing of the Civil Rights Act, and the black-white wealth gap is big. So that's to say there is work to be done, and it's really really big. But it's been narrowing over time. If you look back to say the 1950s, it's narrowed considerably between 1950 and say about 1990. But since about 1990, things sort of stalled a little bit. The gap is about 85%, so it's quite considerable. That gap has narrowed under this president, which is a good thing, but it's still pretty big. It's something that means we have to work towards. So, this president has been focused on facilitating the creation of wealth for all Americans, particularly for Black Americans, focusing on things such as the creation of the MBDA, the Minority Business Development Administration, under the Department of Commerce, which is designed to really focus on enhancing the ability of businesses owned by minorities, women, veterans, to gain access to capital, to gain access to contractor status, so they can build that wealth, to build that generational wealth, and bring those gaps down. And we've seen some success there. If you look at the time period between 2019 and 2023, that was actually a period of the most rapid increase in business ownership for Blacks ever on record. Now, again, that doesn't mean that all the gaps are gone away. We've made a lot of progress, and we want to build on that progress in the future.
What is the Council of Economic Advisors thinking about as we get ready to round out this year, and maybe even beyond? What are some of the things you want to see happen?
So we want to see a lot of things happen. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the strong economy that we had continues to remain strong. We want it to be stable. One of the things that we're very proud of is the fact that this economy has been very stable and very strong. Every month we're seeing new jobs being added. We're seeing a lot of the inflationary pressures come down. Like I said, the last release, inflation was basically zero. Prices were flat. So that basically tells us that the economy is in a good place. It's in a healthy place, and it's going to continue to grow and add jobs. And as we do that, this is always going to maintain more prosperity for Americans, and Black Americans in particular. So what we want to see is we want to see that stability continue, but we also want to make sure that the gains that we see in this economy are shared by everybody. We want to make sure that Black Americans benefit. We want to see that the wage gaps continue to narrow. We want to see that minority-owned businesses are able to gain access to the capital they need to build that generational wealth. We want to see that neighborhoods that historically have been cut off by the Department of Transportation's construction of the railway system or the road system or the highway system that were cut off, that they now have access. We want to see that those who didn't have access to broadband internet are going to be connected to broadband internet, which is a key thing that we need to be successful in today's economy. So we want to sort of build on all the successes that we've had in the past few years. We want to continue to do that.
Yeah, no, that's very, very important. As we look at what has happened in these past 60 years, and especially what you said, all the communities that were cut off by the highways, there's a lot of repair that has to happen to restore, because some of those were thriving Black business communities as well, and we want to keep that in mind. Folks, he's the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Karabo Jackson. Good brother, good to see you, man.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work. Thank you for spending some time with us today. All right, in your shop. Your office is in this building too?
Yeah, just upstairs. Yeah.
Okay, cool. This building is a lot bigger, folks, than it seems from the outside.
We have a lot of offices.
Yeah, Weston was telling me it's like 2 miles if you walk around the whole building, so it's impressive. Thank you, man.
Get my steps in.
Yeah, I know that's right.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Looking forward to talking again. Karabo Jackson, folks, with the Council of Economic Advisors, as we are broadcasting on today. This is Civil Rights Day. We want to remind everyone, too, it is also the birthday of Medgar Evers, July 2nd. And so we lift up his name and the Evers family, as well as Merle Evers. If you check my social media, you will see, and Black Press USA as well, was honored to be with the Evers family, that is Mrs. Evers and her daughter Rena, just a couple of days in May, that first weekend in May, I believe. I think it was first weekend in May, when right after President Biden had given Medgar Evers the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. And I was there. Rena, her daughter, invited me to be there to witness her mother receive that medal, and that is a day I will never forget. It was a blessing to sit with Mrs. Evers and hear her tell stories and hear about their favorite song. The Evers' favorite song, the couple song, was Misty Blue by Dorothy Moore, who's actually from Jackson, Mississippi, like they are. And so we lift up the family and keep Mrs. Evers in our prayers on this day, on what would have been Meg Evers' birthday. It is also, coincidentally, July 2nd, two famous civil rights milestones, the anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. We are live here in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. I'm gonna date myself because I can remember when Eisenhower wasn't even on the building. It was just called OEOB, the old Executive Office Building. And as I said, we're going to be talking with a number of administration officials throughout the course of the day about this anniversary of civil rights. What progress have we made in America 60 years hence the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? So stick around if you don't mind. We'll continue to stream live. Tell a friend, and spend some time with us. And I think we could use some good news right along through here, couldn't we? Stay tuned though. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing our live broadcast from the Executive Office Building here in the White House, MIP at the EOP. We hope you're enjoying it and being enlightened on this anniversary, the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act and the 99th anniversary of birth of Meg Evans. We were just talking to Roderick. I had to remind myself next year will be the centennial of Meg Evans. Wow. And also quite poetic that the Civil Rights Act was passed a year after he passed in life, knowing that he gave his life in this struggle. So what is going on in terms of civil rights? How far have we made it in the past 60 years since 1964? We are joined now by the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Money Man, right? And Wale Adeyemo is our very special guest. Good to see you, brother.
It's great to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you. So talk to us about your role in the Treasury and what the agency is doing in terms of Black economic progress.
Yeah, and I have to acknowledge that this is an important anniversary and important for us to mark. I think the easy way to put it is that we've come a long way, but not far enough.
Yeah.
We've got a lot more to do. And I think my sitting in this office is a testament to some of the progress we've made. In the more than 200-year history of our country, I am the first Black Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department.
Wow, yeah.
And I just read the latest biography about King. And as you know better than most, Reverend King died taking the civil rights struggle and joining it with an economic struggle,
right.
Talking about economic rights, because economic and civil rights are so tied together. I think one of the things the president has focused on since day one with the vice president is the idea is that we want to build an economy that works for everyone, including Black America. And I came to this job from the South Side of Chicago, where I was living before I took this job, working as the president of the Obama Foundation. And I remember during the pandemic seeing those young people, young Black people, who were being sent home to quote unquote learn, but didn't have access to laptops or high-speed internet to be able to learn. And you know well that our community struggled the most during the pandemic. Black unemployment was at 16%. Today, it's been down to lower than 6%, which has been 2 percentage points lower than the last administration. But in addition to the progress we've made in terms of creating jobs, one of the things the president and the vice president have been very focused on is that we need to create Black wealth. Black wealth is important because one of the challenges we've had for a long time in the Black community is that wealth is something that's often passed down. So in addition to seeing Black small business ownership more than double during the Biden administration is something we're very proud of. And we know from conversations I've had with Black businesses, and I went down to Memphis to see the place where Reverend King was shot, but also to meet with the Black community there. And sitting down with Black women business owners, and in lots of ways, Black women have been at the core of this recovery as well. There's two things they say they need. One is access to capital, and another one is access to customers. And the vice president's been very focused on the capital piece. Over the course of this administration, we put $9 billion into community financial institutions, with $1.4 billion specifically going into Black-owned banks. And the reason that matters, as you know, is that a Black-owned bank is more likely to lend to someone in our community because they understand our story, they understand the business. And with that $1.4 billion, that gives them up to $80 billion of lending capacity. So we're very focused on making sure that Black Americans have jobs, but also that we're putting them in a position where we can build wealth in our communities that can be both generational, but can lead to creating things like affordable housing, businesses that hire people in our community. 1.4 million Americans, Black, white, and brown, are employed by Black-owned businesses. Under this administration, that's going to increase.
Wow. Say it again, 1.4.
1.4 million Americans, Black, white, and brown, are employed by Black-owned businesses.
Wow, that's amazing. And as you said, the number of Black-owned businesses has increased, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's doubled under this administration. It's growing faster than any point in the last 30 years because of the policies the vice president and president have put in place. And we're focused on making sure that those businesses become large businesses over time.
Of course, to go into business, to have a business, you got to have that money, that capital. And as you said, and that's part of the struggle. Getting access to capital.
When you often go to the largest banks in this country and you're a small business and you're taking your side hustle, you want to turn into a business, they don't understand your story. They don't understand your customers because your customers come from your community. That's why the vice president was so focused on making sure that of this $9 billion, we provided $1.4 billion directly to Black-owned banks. And those Black-owned banks are small businesses themselves, and they're able to lend into our communities and make sure that these businesses have the opportunity to grow, that people have the ability to invest in their dreams with money that has largely come from financial institutions that are in their communities.
Tell us more about what you do every day in your job to promote this. And does that also include, you mentioned Black-owned banks, but do you dialogue with other major banks about, look, you gotta do this. We have to change the way this has always been done.
I do. A big part of my job, I have really three things I focus on for the secretary, who's been a real champion. Janet Yellen's been a real champion for these issues. The first one is national security, which matters a great deal to making sure that we keep our country safe. The second one is implementation of laws like the Inflation Reduction Act, and making sure that laws like the Inflation Reduction Act don't only make the wealthiest American more wealthy, but that the money from those laws get to communities that have been left out and left behind for too long. And one of the things we're proudest of is of the investments that have been made in the Inflation Reduction Act, the vast majority of them are going to underrepresented and underserved communities, either in rural areas or in low-income communities. But to your point, I spend a lot of time on the phone with banks, but also big companies around the country. And one of the things the vice president has done is she's created a coalition of these big companies called the Economic Opportunity Coalition. And she said, the government's now provided $9 billion of capital to community-owned banks. We need you to help. We need you to do your part. And she's went out and worked with us in a bipartisan way, frankly, to get these companies to step up and provide more money to these banks. And that's from companies like Google to banks like Bank of America and Wells Fargo, but working to make sure that these companies that made a number of commitments after the murder of George Floyd are fulfilling them in a way that means that small businesses and communities that need this money get access to this money.
No, that is very, very important. Have you gotten a positive response from others, as you say, they have to put in and match as well? Is that happening?
So we've had these companies already commit to $1 billion of money that they've put into these community institutions. We're hoping in the next few weeks to make another announcement of these companies, these large companies in this country, committing another $1 billion to these institutions in order to make sure they have money to lend to businesses in our community. And the other thing, and we talked about this, in addition to needing capital, the thing these small businesses need are customers. The best customers are big companies, because these big companies are going to be ordering things not just tomorrow, but for years. And the vice president has been focused on talking to these big businesses about making sure that you diversify your supply chain, that you go out and you hire businesses that are small, medium size, that come from communities that have been left out and left behind. And this is a place where we're hoping in the next few weeks, again, we're going to have an announcement about some of these big businesses making long-term commitments to hiring businesses in our communities.
Do big businesses, Mr. Secretary, benefit economically from successful, smaller, diverse businesses? I mean, it's not just doing it for doing its sake. I mean, doesn't that kind of...
They're never doing this for charity, and I think that's one of the most important things that Secretary Yellen talks about. Ultimately, investing in the Black community is about unlocking this nation's unrealized potential, because racism has not allowed us to invest in places where talent has existed for generations, but opportunity has not. And for many of these businesses, you're their customers. You're the people who buy their products. So by investing in these communities, it allows their customers to do better, which means that when you think about the way the economy works, you have more money to spend in their businesses. So this is profitable to them, but it also creates resilience for them, because by diversifying their supply chain, they're not just reliant on one supplier, but they can build other suppliers that can provide them with the goods and services they need to be successful companies. So none of these companies are simply doing this because it's the right thing to do, even though it is the right thing to do. But they're doing it because it makes economic sense for them to do it as well.
And it helps the overall economy.
Yeah, and that's what fundamentally my job is as the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, is how do I grow the United States economy? And one of the things that we know, and Secretary Yellen calls it modern supply side economics, is that by investing in communities that have been left out, we have the best opportunity to create growth in the economy that will help us compete better against countries outside of countries around the world, from China to Europe. The best way to put America in the best competitive position is to invest in communities like the Black community, because investing there unlocks growth for the entire economy.
And it affects everything else. You have successful Black businesses. Those are jobs to help young people get into the world of work,
Yeah.
and whatnot. You mentioned customers, though.
I did.
Because what's interesting is we always talk about how African Americans have all of this disposable income, and we are everyone's customers.
Yep.
We are good at being customers.
Yeah.
So it's time that flip over a little bit.
Exactly. And we've got to be focused on building wealth in our community, because, when you think about it, for too long, home ownership, business ownership in general has been underrepresented in our community. And what that means is that it puts our next generation at a disadvantage in terms of their ability to be able to build the type of wealth in this country. And I think something that you had me reemphasize that's really important is that when Black people do well, America does well.
Yeah.
You look at the fact that 1.4 million Americans of all races are employed by Black-owned businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, we've been customers to lots of businesses for a long time,
Right.
but us being business owners is good for the entire economy.
Yeah, no question. And as we go, you inspire me too when you mentioned how much talent was left on the table 60 years ago. And think about that. We just saw how the Major League Baseball actually is putting African Americans on top. That was talent that was denied, and now they're at the top of the record books. How many successful Black business owners could there have been if, just like in baseball, we had the kind of initiative that you're doing right now? So we're making up for lost time.
No, and I can't thank the president, the vice president, and Secretary Yellen being focused on it. And I think our goal has to be to continue to create opportunities for Black people to do exactly what we do when we have opportunities, which is succeed. And the Black community success is America's success.
Indeed it is.
Yeah.
Indeed it is.
Thank you so much for having me on this day, and thank you for everything that you do.
Good to see you, man. The Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. Y'all, big time now. This is the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. This is the money man. Quick,
Yes.
Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman,
When
we're
does that
putting her
happen?
on the bill as soon as possible. Something I'm focused on all the time. We just put her on a coin, but she's got to go on the $20 bill, and it's going to happen.
Timeline.
Our goal is to make sure that it happens before the president is done. So we're
Okay.
looking forward to doing that in the second term.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Wale Adeyemo, Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. Thanks for coming by. my
Thank
brother.
you.
All right, folks, we are at the Eisenhower Executive Office Building for this day, the anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, as well as the anniversary of the birth of Medgar Evers, talking about all the gains that have been made. We just heard from the first ever African-American Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. That's a big deal. That's not a small thing. We're going to be joined now, please, if you would, by the Acting Secretary.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon. No, that's fine. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Forgive
How
my
are
seat.
you?
Forgive my seat. We're streaming live, so
Yes.
she
Hello
is
to the audience.
she's the Acting Secretary of HUD, Adrian Todman. Secretary Todman, how are you?
I am doing fabulous. And how are you doing?
I'm just fine. Where you from?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm originally from the beautiful island of St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And
Okay.
I've been here in the DMV for the past 30 years or so.
Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful. Well, glad to have you. And how are things at home in St. Thomas?
Homes are fine. I am thankful that the hurricane that just went through
Yes.
did not impact my family and my neighbors there, but my heart goes out to all the folks who live in St. Vincent and other islands who were impacted. My heart goes out to them and my prayers as well.
Well, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You enjoying your
I love it. I
Good
love
time?
it. I've been here since 2021 as a deputy of the agency, and when the very fabulous Marsha Fudge decided to retire on me, I was very happy very happy that
She retired on you,
she
right? I know
retired on
that's
me. Very happy
She
to.
retired on a lot of us.
She sure did, but we still love her.
We were like,
We still
Marsha,
love
wait a
her.
minute. What happened? We were trying to do a couple of, okay.
But she's still our girl. Yeah. But very happy to have the president's confidence in acting as acting secretary.
Talk to us about pro housing.
Yes. So Pro Housing is a brand new program, and its goal is to make building housing easier to do so we can get more housing so more people can rent and purchase a home at lower costs. It's that simple. And it's very intentional. We gave $85 million to different cities and states across the country so they could invest in themselves and ways they want to speed up the housing process. So it's a brand new program, the first of its kind. The vice president announced it last week, and we at HUD are very excited about it.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing. But let me say this.
Okay.
It's affordable housing, but in some situations, it's just housing at all. One of the things that we have is that we have not, as a country, we have not built as much housing as we need, affordable or just housing in general, in the past now 15 years. So we have almost 2 to 3 million units of housing we have to catch up on. So we need affordable housing. We need housing for the middle class that want to purchase their first home. We need housing for folks who are coming out of homelessness. We need all forms of it. But here at HUD, of course, we focus on affordable, so our money will be committed to affordable housing.
And you mentioned homelessness. That's especially timely now with the Supreme Court decision. We need that right away, don't we?
We need to make sure that our unhoused brothers and sisters are getting into apartments and have shelter. One of the biggest travesties of this country is that we have homelessness to begin with. So this president and our vice president have been laser focused on not just getting new resources, but just being smart about the way we can get this done. And we've been working with mayors across the country.
How's it going? How's it getting off the ground? How's the rollout?
I mean, I will say last year, we were disappointed because the homelessness number went up. But we paid attention and we were intentional. We put $3 billion out on the street, the largest amount of funds to go to homelessness intervention ever. We also provided a new program for mayors who had a lot of encampments to make sure that they were bringing indoors some of our brothers and sisters who are sleeping on the streets. I'm excited because some of the very early numbers are coming in for our housing, our homelessness count, and some cities are beginning to see slight decreases in homelessness. I'm going to knock on wood because we want to make sure that the work we're doing is intentional and getting to results, and that most importantly, Americans are seeing those results.
Civil Rights Act 1964, we have a lot of catching up to do.
We sure do.
The basis of the middle class, we just had a Poor People's Campaign this weekend, Poor People's March. The basis of a middle class family, I mean, that's about all you can do in America is have a home. Having that home in this country.
It's everything.
It's everything. So we do have a lot of catching up to do, don't we?
We do. But here's what I'm excited about. Here's what I'm excited about. Even in the turbulent housing times that we have right now, interest rates are high, people are looking for a home, people feel locked out of the home ownership process. Imagine a scenario where everybody who was at the March on Washington, that's about 250,000 people. Imagine if everybody at the March on Washington were giving keys to their home. That's what we've done. We have housed 250,000 Black Americans.
In what period of time?
In the past 2 years.
Past 2 years.
Just in the past 2 years. So that is the power of our amplification. And keep in mind that 250,000 is just the person purchasing. It's not the children who's going to benefit from that home purchase and the generational wealth. It's not their children's children who will be able to also have their lives changed because of the family now being able to get that wealth and be able to send folks to college, buy that next house. I'm excited about what we've done. And the reason we have those numbers now is we did common sense things, right? First-time homeowners, probably never owned a home before, probably never had a mama or papa who owned a home before. So they've only been paying their rent, but they've been paying their rent on time. So one of the things that we did for the first time was look at on-time rental payments to help folks qualify for our programs. And our programs are very competitive. So everybody in the sound of my voice, go to HUD.gov, go to FHA, and look at what it takes to purchase a home through HUD's programs. We have helped 3 million first-time homeowners get a home in the last 3 years. And I'm really excited about that.
On-time rental payments.
So on-time rental payments before was not counted toward sort of our underwriting of who can get our mortgage insurance.
Right.
We introduced that, and we're already seeing a shift in who's coming in and who we're helping.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
HUD has always kind of been known as the black agency. I mean,
I got you. Yeah.
So, and obviously so, this is very important work.
Yes.
And we know that right after 64 Civil Rights Act,
Yes.
the other,
That's
in,
right.
in that triumvirate of past 64, 65, and then 68
That's right.
Fair Housing Act.
So much of HUD's work was born out of blood that was shed by JFK and Dr. King. Civil rights, JFK. Dr. King, we finally got the Fair Housing Act passed.
Right,
You know,
right.
our mission, part of our mission is to carry out the Fair Housing Act, make sure that whether it's race, gender, religion, family status, that we are making sure that you have access to not just home ownership, but just to rent an apartment, and making sure that you are able to get those keys the way anybody else can. One of the things we're proud of in our work there is that we have been looking at this thing that's called appraisal bias. So, discrimination doesn't just happen once you got your home. We have been looking at appraisal bias, which is, you've got an appraiser coming to your house. They see pictures, of your aunties and your grandma and everybody else. See the books that you're reading, and you're like, this must be a black family. And they lowball. They lowball.
I didn't know that, really.
Oh, it's real. They lowball the appraisal on your house. Same house across the street, white family, a higher appraisal.
I mean, I know they do that in certain zip codes, but
Right.
you're saying in a neighborhood, even if it's in a mixed neighborhood,
It can happen. And it's been happening.
You got pictures of your family.
That's right. And so this president, and I'm proud to be part of this administration, because what this president said was, we can't have that. So he charged HUD and the Domestic Policy Council, at that point it was Susan Rice and Marcia Fudge, two bad sisters, and got together and said, what can we do to address this? And we've been working on this for the past 2 years. And so part of addressing it is saying the issue out loud, bringing visibility to it, letting folks know that if you feel that this has happened to you, you have someplace to go to make amends. And,
So how does that happen? Are you able to hold appraisers accountable? Do you have that authority?
So one of the things that we did was we created a process at HUD. We created a process that's called the reevaluation. And so if you feel that your home was lowballed and you have FHA insurance, our insurance on your home, you can come to us and request a reevaluation, and it can happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a big deal. Banks, loans to get homes. How's that going?
One of the things that has happened since the Great Recession in 08, 09 is many of the big banks aren't necessarily doing a lot of work with FHA anymore, and that's a whole separate conversation. But we still have a lot of lenders, our non-bank lenders, who are right there at the table helping folks purchase their first home or just purchase their dream home. And, we're working very closely with banks. We do have some of the big banks who are doing really innovative things to help bring down costs, particularly with the high interest rates. But what I really encourage folks to do is try to find a bank that's doing FHA loans, because when you do that, not only are you getting, quite frankly, a better deal, but in the long run, you have a protection. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. During the pandemic, and when we came in, remember, a global pandemic, things were not good. Right? HUD was not doing the kind of things that it should do under previous leadership. So what we did was we wanted to make sure we were keeping people in their homes. And think about who was most impacted by the pandemic. It's people who look like you and me. So we made sure that if you have an FHA insured mortgage, we were able to work with the servicers to say, let's give folks a break. Let's give them forbearance so they don't have to pay right now because they lost their job, or somebody in the family lost their job. And then we went beyond that. We said, let's find a way that we can look at your mortgage and create a mortgage package that you can afford so you can keep your home. We did that, and we helped almost 200,000 Black households keep their home.
Wow,
And
that's
we're
amazing.
and to me, this is the point of leadership, right? Our president on day one, and you might have heard that with some of my colleagues, on day one said we are going to look at our programs through a lens of equity. And that's what we've been doing. These things that I'm talking about didn't happen because we, just, had great dreams. It came about because we knew that there are people in this country who need help. That pandemic took a hit on the Black community. So we knew we had to start day one protecting people's assets so that they could keep that generational wealth in their family. We knew that people couldn't pay their rent. So we put $50 billion, Wally, who was sitting here, a great friend of mine, together put $50 billion out to help people pay their rent. We have the most rental assistance vouchers in the history of the program to help people pay their rent. So, we're very intentional in what we're doing. And, what I'm hoping is that more folks are learning about that, not just about the history of what we've done, but also to know where their opportunities are for themselves and their family members.
This is great. This is great news. Very important work going on, folks. And we know in our history, we didn't have access to any of this, but this is how the American dream was made. This is how the American dream got started. We were left out of that.
That's right.
When we talk about reparations, that's what we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, the middle class and those who are in the upper middle class, some folks think that folks just woke up one morning on the Cabbage Patch and had some money. No, they had FHA loans, they had GI bills.
That's right. That's right.
Everybody didn't come from heaven down. Most came from hell up. And so that's very important. So good to see you. You are acting.
Yes.
So what are we doing about that?
I serve at the pleasure of the president.
Okay, no, I was wondering because I didn't know whether some people were messing with you up on the hill. We need to go get somebody.
Well, I'll give you a call. I'll let you know.
Okay,
I'll let you know. We'll get that
straightened
out. That's right. We'll get that cleaned up.
Since Marsha just left you like that, we got to make sure.
I know. She's my sister, though. What are we going to do? We love her. We love her.
Adrienne Tomlin, she's the acting secretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. So glad to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Stay
for coming
well.
back.
Of course. My pleasure.
You too. Happy Civil Rights Day. All right.
Take care.
All right, folks. We are live here in the Executive Office of the President, MIP, in the EOP, you all, on this anniversary day. And we're rolling right along talking to a number of officials here at the White House. This is also the 99th anniversary of the birth of Medgar Evers. And if you missed it earlier, I invite you to go to my social media, Instagram, Twitter, at Minister. I don't think I put it on TikTok yet. Maybe I did. I don't know. To see the moment when the Presidential Medal of Freedom, Myrlie Evers couldn't travel here to the White House where we are to receive her husband's Presidential Medal of Freedom in May from President Biden. So I happened to be in LA, and Rena Evers, her daughter, invited me to come by as she presented the medal to her mom. And there was some practicality on my part, because I said, well, Rena, if I'm coming, we got to document that. We got to film it. So I did. And to see Myrlie Evers is a journey. To see Myrlie Evers hold that medal in her arms, and you even see on the video where she hugs it. To see her do that is so moving, because that's quite a journey. And Medgar gave his life that we would have this. And our last guest mentioned JFK. She mentioned some of the praisers and them seeing certain pictures on the wall. Another way, it's not as true anymore, but another way you could always tell a Black household was when you had our families always had a picture of John F. Kennedy, Jesus, and Dr. King, all right there together. That was a Black household. And then just months after Medgar's death in 1963, was Kennedy's death. This was a violent time when it came to people in leadership and people trying to affect civil rights. So we are commemorating that today. We are thinking about that. What is the progress that has been made? And I've heard things I haven't heard before, as I'm sure you have. I'm not supposed, I can say it, and nobody else will say it. I mean, we need some commercials out of this or something, because this is some news, some good news that folks need to know about it. People, what's going on? And unfortunately, a lot of these things aren't things that you can see en masse, but when you're talking about over 1 million people, you're not going to run into on the street 1 million people who are working for a Black-owned business, but they exist. The 250,000 people whose homes were saved during COVID with forbearance, as the acting secretary just said, but they exist. So, and these are the little things that matter that I think we kind of want to keep going, right? Amen. I think that's what we want to do. So we are here. We're glad you can join us. Tell a friend. We're spending the day here at the White House. Can y'all believe they let me in the White House? For all day. I'm here all day too. They didn't just run me in and out of there. It made me nice and comfortable. As I said, this is the Secretary of War's conference room. So I will presume that at some point in history, in this room were probably meetings about war and planning war and responding to war. The Defense Department was not always called defense. It was called the Department of War, and there was a Secretary of War. So we are in this historic space on this anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. I want to lift up, and this is something that I've even talked to the president about. When we talk about the Civil Rights Act, there was no one more instrumental than Clarence Mitchell, the 101st Senator, the head of the Washington Bureau, the chief lobbyist for the NAACP. And he walked the halls every day to get 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act. And remember, Lyndon Johnson said, well, I don't think I can do those back to back. That's a lot. But then Selma happened, and he really had no choice but to do it. Civil Rights Act, and then the Fair Housing Act of 1968, right after the death of Dr. King. These are all very, very important and historic acts, and the trauma. You can really almost compare those three acts 100 years later, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 3. 64, 65, 68, 3, just like that. And we don't want to go back. We know there are those who would take us back, but we don't want that to be the case. We want to be able to continue to go forward in the way that we are, so that we can make sure that all the gains that have been made are continuing to be made. Amen. So that's where we are. That's why we're here, and that's why this administration, not a whole lot of administrations that can see, to invite people like me up here, you got to have something to say. So I mean, you can't invite me up here if you don't have anything to say about civil rights, if you're not doing anything about it. So this is very, very important. And we want to say now, we're so honored to be joined by a dear friend. Now, we can talk about civil rights and his work. We probably want to talk about our kids, though, right? Because we both have sons that just graduated
from college.
From
Unbelievable.
college, same age. And how are you, man?
I'm great. It is it's such an honor to be here with you and with all your listeners and viewers on this momentous day, 60 years. And you and I have had a lot of conversations about what Ted Kennedy used to call the unfinished business of America, which is civil rights.
Well, there's no way I could be here without talking to you. And,
I appreciate
America
that.
can do that. She's like, well, this is man, so we gotta hook this up, if nobody else. Well, first of all, congratulations to your son.
I appreciate it. Same with you. He just moved into an apartment in New York,
Okay.
so he's going to come see you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
And go to a baseball game.
Oh, that'd be fun. He's a Red Sox fan, though. I want to make sure you know
That's
that.
right. I forgot about that.
I just full disclosure, man. You're family. I can't lie to you.
That's right. No, I forgot.
Yeah.
I remember that because you got the Red Sox hat on your social media. We'll let that. We'll let that pass. But the good news is, our Negro League ancestors are now at the top of the record book.
And you know what? I was in Kansas City for the Conference of Mayors about 10 days ago. My favorite baseball museum in America, no offense to Cooperstown, is in Kansas City, the Negro Leagues Museum.
Was that your first time?
No. I've been there. Every time I go to Kansas City, I try to drop by. My only beef with them is Buck Leonard's statue. They have the wrong glove. They have this wrong hand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's the same thing. If you go to Camden Yards in Baltimore, Babe Ruth, they have the wrong glove on him. Like you think that there would have been a review process that would have figured that one out.
You got to get you back to Jackie Robinson Museum in New York. Have you been there?
I have not. I want to do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
You'd love
Count
that
me
as
in.
well.
Count my son in.
All right. Staff's looking at us like they're talking about baseball. What is it?
Well, baseball was a part of the civil rights movement. And,
Indeed.
Branch Rickey was not stupid. He understood racism in America, and he understood that first person who was going to break the color barrier better be pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And that was very accurate.
Yeah, but it's poetic now that I think Josh wanted to be that person.
Yeah.
But now he's on top of the race. It's almost like poetic justice.
Totally.
Jackie was the man called to do it,
Totally.
but now Josh is right on top.
Yeah.
So Tom, we should also acknowledge, Tom has worn many hats in service, and not small hats either. He was Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. He was a Secretary of Labor, and that's how we really got to know each other, because Tom used to come on every month.
Yep.
And we talked
Making
about
it real. Yeah.
and we would talk about
Jobs
the
numbers.
jobs numbers. So your thoughts on this
Yeah.
60th anniversary?
Well,
of
it's
the Civil Rights
historic. I mean, these are moments where we get off the dance floor and onto the balcony and
Right.
reflect on where we were, where we've come, and where we need to go. And I think about it 60 years later. We have, and sometimes we pivot immediately to the unfinished business, and that's understandable. But I think we would be doing a disservice to all those who frankly gave their life for this, and all those who fought inside and outside government for the passage of the Civil Rights Act, not to acknowledge the progress that it has helped us make as a nation. It is one of the most important parts of our nation's social compact. And over the last 60 years, so many people of color have been able to move up the ladder of opportunity in work, in school, access federal funding. I look at where we are now, on the black unemployment rate. We continue to make progress. I want there to be zero disparity between the black brown unemployment rates and the white unemployment rates. Those, we're not there yet, but we are as close as we have been to there because of the investments that continue to be making. Black wealth, Latino wealth, other communities of color are making real progress in bridging the wealth gap. And so, I think this is a moment that brings real pride. And I remember a lot of the cases I did when I led the Civil Rights Division, making sure that police departments, fire departments, other public sector employers were holding up their legal obligations. Too many, the problem in Ferguson, the problem that led to Ferguson was that you had, predominantly minority community being policed by folks who not only didn't look like them, but they weren't, in most cases, they weren't even from Ferguson.
Yeah.
And so, we've made real progress on a number of areas. It's undeniable, but, this hostile court wants to turn the clock back on civil rights. I'm going to stick to the official side, but there couldn't be
we
a
never
starker
do. You and I never do that well.
difference. In the approach on, I don't know what a black job is. Maybe you can explain it to me.
I'm trying to figure
But,
it out.
I just think
We're in black. You're witnessing 2 black jobs. I know
Yeah.
folks don't think these are black jobs. The director of the Office of
Yeah.
Intergovernmental Relations and senior advisor to the president, and he's
Yeah.
had several black jobs, as I said.
Yeah.
Sis Attorney General for Civil Rights,
Yeah.
Secretary. Like these are black jobs, right?
Yeah. No, and I don't even know what to say on that. I
Yeah.
mean, some of the things, on one level, again, we should celebrate our progress, but we have to be clear-eyed right now.
Right.
We're at an inflection point. There are the assaults on DEI. DEI is not corporate philanthropy or philanthropy in higher ed or philanthropy anywhere. It's about enlightened self-interest. It's about doing the right thing in communities. And you see these attacks. We have a hostile court that has said that discrimination is a thing of the past. And while it's not the Civil Rights Act of 64, but my worst day in government was when the Voting Rights Act, which was passed a year later in 65, when the court struck down the heart and soul of the Voting Rights Act in 2013, saying basically that we're fine now. And I don't know what planet you're living in to say that discrimination is a thing of the past. So make no mistake about it, Mark. We have a lot of unfinished business, and so much of this business is existential.
Yeah,
it really is.
It is. It's great. And before you came in, I was just saying out loud in front of Roderica, you had 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments. Then you had 100 years later, 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, 68 Fair Housing Act. This is kind of the history of this country. We take steps forward and then kind of get pushed back. And that's what people need to understand. There are good gains that have been made. There's unfinished business, but everything is threatened. Right now.
And I mean, and again, we come back to Dr. King. I think about his statement all the time. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Yeah. But what history also teaches us, and what Dr. King taught us, is that it never bends on its own. And I when I hear people sort of throw up their hands and say, I don't know if I want to participate, that's just not an option right now. We have so much going on. The stakes are indeed so high right now, and we've made we really have made tremendous progress. Remember one thing that the historic gains we've made in employment, these investments we've made, the most under discussed executive action that this president took. He took on day one. It was President Biden understood that if we did our job right, we could pass an American Rescue Plan that would help communities climb out of the pandemic. We could pass an infrastructure bill unlike anything since Eisenhower and before. We could make the biggest investments in climate change in our country's history. And if we do all those things, we have to make sure that there is connective tissue. And the executive order I'm referring to was an executive order on equity, in which he said, every federal dollar needs to be funneled through an equity lens. And what does that mean? That means transportation dollars. One thing I learned in this job that I didn't fully appreciate is that so many of the infrastructure projects of the late 50s and the early 60s were projects that went directly through minority communities. Milwaukee, one example, 15,000 black homes obliterated, like another 1,000 black businesses obliterated so that they could construct Interstate 43 and Interstate 94. Syracuse, New York, I-81 went right through the black community. And I was there in Syracuse. And I remember meeting a guy who, African-American resident who, community was torn apart. And, he's now part of the union that's rebuilding it.
Wow.
I mean, reconnecting communities, that's what we call this initiative. It's about reconnecting opportunity. And that equity lens is what Joe Biden's North Star has always been. And you can look at all these investments that have been made. Investments are about helping people. So many communities of color that now have access to affordable housing, so many communities that have been left out that now have high-speed internet.
Yeah.
So many communities,
Right.
where, people with diabetes, and diabetes disproportionately affects Black and brown communities, $35 a month.
Yeah.
That's equity in action.
Yeah, no, that's important. Are these some of the points? Because I want people to hear some of these numbers.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I want to go through those, and if you all have a copy,
Yeah.
please leave with me because I'm going to expound on that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to turn this in. He's not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it a commercial. He can't do it.
Yeah.
It's going, but just
No,
walk
I mean,
us through that.
the share of Black families who own businesses have more than doubled since 2019. Black business ownership among Black Americans is growing at its fastest rate in 30 years. You look at the unemployment rate of Latinos, it was 8% when Biden took office. It's now under 5% or right at 5%. It's gone down precipitously. The number of Black children that have been lifted from poverty, is remarkable. These are just remarkable accomplishments that are transforming communities. You go to the Hill District of Pittsburgh. It's where August Wilson grew up.
That's right.
And that was one of those communities that was torn apart in the name of urban renewal, and we're bringing it back. That's what it's about. The statistics are one thing. Behind every statistic is a person. And we are giving hope to families that had frankly lost hope. We've got a lot more work to do, and we're confronting some real headwinds. The Dobbs decision was horrific for every community. It's particularly horrific for lower income communities. And now we live in a country where you got to win the geographic lottery to have access to reproductive health. And that is not right. And that's why anyone who thinks that, my participation doesn't matter, please think again, because we've got a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of unfinished business. And that's, I reflect on this day with pride. I have the privilege of enforcing this law for many years at the Civil Rights Division. I took that solemn obligation and oath very seriously. And I know President Biden does as well.
Tom Perez, the Director of the Office of Intergovernmental Relations and Senior Advisor to the President. I'm going to share some of this with you all as well. My brother, good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
I never asked you this. Which Black job do you miss the most? Attorney General, Secretary of Labor? I mean, which one?
I've lived a charmed life, Mark. I've had the opportunity in every job to help people in need. And, my faith teaches me, and my parents taught me that, when someone's down, you help lift them up. Yeah. And that's what I've tried to do.
Thank you, man.
Take care, my friend.
Talk to you. I'll text you later.
Yes.
We plot and plan offline too, folks. That's what we do.
Yes, we do.
That's my man. Thank you. Appreciate you. The Director of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs and Senior Advisor to the President, our good friend, Tom Perez. Always good to see him. As we are, once again, folks, in the Executive Office Building, named for Dwight Eisenhower, who has some civil rights history himself. For those who don't know, he had to send troops to Little Rock to enforce school desegregation there. And that's an important moment in history. Today, 60 years ago, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. And as the Secretary of HUD said to us when she was here, a lot of that had to do with memorializing President Kennedy, because it's something that he began to work on and then was felled by an assassin's bullet before he could see it come to fruition. We're joined now by the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Brother Terrence Hayes. Hey, man.
Good to meet you, Reverend.
Good to see you, man. You good?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today. Truly appreciate it. It's an honor.
It's a pleasure. I always like finding out where people from, man. Where you from?
From Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay. All right, bro. Good to see you, man.
Hey.
How are things at the VA?
Things at the VA are doing well. Obviously there's still
You
a
a
lot
veteran?
of work. I'm a veteran. Served in the Army for 20 years.
Wow.
Retired in 2016. So this work is very near and dear to me. My parents were in the military, and my brother's in the military right now. So everything that we're doing at VA is very personal. But we're doing great things, doing great work. And one of the things that I'm proud of is that we're digging in deep on how we can get benefits in the hands of our minority brothers and sisters. And we know for decades there were some disparities there at VA in our institution.
Yeah.
And we have an office now dedicated to correcting that situation and actually delivering those benefits and that care to those men and women.
An office dedicated to Black veterans?
Not necessarily
Is
to
anybody-
Black veterans,
okay.
but to dedicated towards equity and figuring out how we can ensure that no matter what veteran comes through our doors for their benefits and their care, that they get treated equally across the board.
One of the knocks against the VA is that even for those who could get access, it's just slow
Absolutely.
as molasses in January.
Absolutely.
Have you all been able to address that?
Absolutely. I hear that I'll be seeing you in a few days at the NAACP convention. So we'll be there. And what we're doing now, Reverend, is that we're bringing VA to the people. At the convention, we're going to have claims clinics. We're going to have enrollment clinics on site. So veterans who are attending the NAACP convention can come to us, sign up for their benefits right in and there. Some of them may actually leave with a rating on the spot. And also we'll be able to enroll them into the care that they've rightly deserved and earned. So again, we're bringing VA to the people. In the past, it was, folks coming to us. So that approach obviously did not work. And this is feedback from a lot of our veterans. So that's what we're doing.
So, I mean, there have to be millions. The number of Black veterans.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Can we quantify that at all?
Yeah, you're looking at probably about 2 to 3 million Black veterans.
Yeah. And now in the army
that actually come to us for care and benefits. There's obviously more.
Oh yeah, right.
And that's why we're trying to do everything we can to reach those individuals who may not have come to VA or may have had bad experience at VA. We want to encourage them to come back, give us another shot.
And let's face it, for the millions of us who go into the military, a lot of times that's a way to make a living. We've been talking about economics. It's
Yes,
a way
sir.
to get that first home. It's a way to get that degree.
Yes, sir.
It's I used to call it sort of an economic conscription. In peacetime, that's not a bad move to make.
It's not. Just last week, we celebrated the 80th anniversary of the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Where obviously folks were able to receive educational benefits, VA home loan, veterans rehabilitation as well. So again, we're doing everything we can to ensure that those women and men who have served, that we serve them just as well. So, these programs that we have, as you just stated, are able to put folks in different positions, whether you're building that first-time generational wealth for your family, or you might be a first-time college graduate or first-time homeowner. This is stuff that's due to these women and men, and we want to ensure that we ensure each one of them take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very important. That has to happen. So somebody's listening, Brother Hayes, and things are moving slow for them in terms of getting what they need from the VA. What advice can you give them?
Yeah, the advice I can give them is this: is that what I want you to do is to please visit our website at va.gov. You'll see the phone number there. Give us a call, and if you're being slow-rolled at any point, you can even reach out directly to me. You can find me on all the social media platforms. But again, our number one goal is to ensure that you're getting the benefits and care that you've earned. And if that's not happening, again, please make every effort that you can to contact us, and we'll be able to put you in contact with the appropriate folks so you can get those benefits and that care as soon as possible.
And when we're talking about benefits, these are primarily health benefits, but there are others as well, right?
Absolutely. You obviously have the healthcare benefits, free healthcare. We know that the cost of healthcare is increasing across the country. So to these men and women who have served our nation, this makes a huge difference. And of course, there's disability compensation benefits, so monthly monetary benefits that can really impact households. And many of these benefits are due to these women and men because of injuries or illnesses that they have suffered while serving our country. So again, we need to do everything we can at the department, and we're doing that. President Biden just in 2022 signed this historic law called the PACT Act. And the PACT Act has now positioned us to deliver more than $5.7 billion in earned benefits to more than 1 million veterans who have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, the Gulf War.
How much money?
$5.7 billion
Wow.
for 1 million veterans. That's only 1 million veterans. There's so many other veterans out there and their surviving families who are due to these benefits. And again, we want to encourage any of you who may not have heard of this new law that the president signed 2 years ago. Please give us a call, visit the website. You can learn more there, but we want you to sign up for your benefits ASAP, because most times than not, we're able to get to yes and get you those benefits in your hands within a matter of months.
And as you said, I mean, we may not be in a wartime now, so to speak, but people still risking their lives.
Yes, sir.
And you know, there are workplace hazards. Some of y'all ain't in the military and dealing with workplace hazards. And then there are other individuals, the sisters who, with the drone piece that just happened.
Yes, yes.
So, you know, these things are happening. We want to be sure. That's definitely one thing that I respect Biden a lot for saying, because he's one of the few people who's ever, because I always said to myself, I'm not going to be the president. I don't want to be president. But if I was, the two things I'd be about: high-speed rail.
Oh, absolutely.
And hooking y'all up. I mean, if you're going to take care of anybody, that shouldn't even be, that just ought to be automatic, because you all are front line.
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to our veterans, our service members, it should be a bipartisan across the board, conversation.
Should be.
It should be. And because these women and men go in harm's way to protect the freedoms that we are fortunate to have. So again, I'm with you. I think that we need to do everything that we can to ensure that everyone who wears his uniform is taken care of.
Should be. We got a lot of folk who love veterans, but when it comes time to sign on the dotted line, we can't find them. So you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you're there as well to see this through. What are some of the other things that you all are doing at the VA that you weren't doing before you got there?
Yeah, again, I think the main thing is, again, delivering that VA experience to our veterans, taking it to their backyards.
Right.
What we're doing over the next several months is called Summer Vet Fest. And we're going to go to all 50 states. We're going to have events in all 50 states at our facilities, and inviting veterans, their surviving families, their caregivers to come in a barbecue style type of an event where then on site, again, they'll be able to sign up for their healthcare benefits and apply for their disability compensation benefits. This is a new way of doing business. This is feedback we've received from our veterans saying that, hey, you know what, VA should be more outward and coming to us, as opposed to maybe slapping stuff on the website and hoping that, we see it. So again, we want veterans to sign up for their benefits. That's the new VA. The VA of old may have been, kind of resistant or hesitant to even put that message out. But we're going into the backyards of all of these places to ensure that everybody knows what's available to them. And we're doing everything we can to ensure that we get these benefits and this care in their hands.
That's great.
So again, that's just one aspect of what we're doing, and that's because of the leadership of the president.
Yeah, no, that's great to go out in those communities so that people can see it.
Absolutely. Been rebuilding that trust.
What about home ownership initiatives and things like that?
Yes, sir. So one thing that we're doing is we're ensuring that even if veterans are facing some hard times right now, and they could be potentially facing foreclosure.
Right.
We've instituted a new program called VASP, and it's the VA Servicing Purchase Program, to where we want to ensure that veterans can maintain that low interest rate, if they are facing those hard times. So we have that plan in place as of right now. And to any veteran out there who may be, having some challenging times, and especially dealing with home ownership, please give us a call so we can ensure that you stay in your home. One of the things that we're very proud of over the past 3 years is that we made a major dent in veteran homelessness. Over the past 3 years, we've been able to permanently house more than 40,000 veterans each and every year. just this last week in the city of Los Angeles, we've heard some great news in Los Angeles, where a large population of homeless veterans reside, that the numbers have declined. And we had those chats with Mayor Bass and her team. Again, that's just progress. We know there's so much more work to do, but we know that if we can make that progress in Los Angeles, we can do that same thing in Chicago. We can do that same thing in my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, and so forth, to ensure that no woman, no man is homeless, especially because they serve this country.
Y'all hear what the brother said? I can say this, he can't. Folks saying that homelessness is a crime, you understand that. You know how many people who are out here on these streets who are veterans. So you're gonna criminalize people who serve this country just because they are unhoused. That's not the answer. Suicide.
Oh, yes. Yeah, suicide, it's a national problem. It's one that we are taking very seriously. As a matter of fact, Secretary McDonough will be at the VA and Department of Defense Suicide Prevention Conference in a matter of days, talking on this very subject. We're thankful because we're approaching the second anniversary of the 988 hotline.
Yeah.
Where that's made huge dividends, especially if you're in the middle of a crisis. You know, to remember a 10-digit number is very tough. But now with the institution of 988, we've seen dividends where lives have been saved because of that. And if veterans are out there right now who may be in the midst of a crisis, I encourage you to dial 988 and press the number 1, and you'll immediately come in contact with a live person who can provide you with the needs and the care that you require in the midst of that crisis.
And those are always heartbreaking stories to me.
Absolutely, sir.
We got to go, but just real quick, what is it about veterans that makes them so susceptible to homelessness and or suicide? What's on? Because I've been thinking about Vietnam and associate only with that, but we're well beyond Vietnam.
No, I hear you.
So what is going on there?
Yeah, I just think that, and I'm speaking as a veteran myself, I think some veterans just don't have a proper transition, when they depart the military. And so we at VA are working with the Department of Defense to ensure that our veterans have that proper transition so they don't find themselves in those troubles of homelessness or, without a job or without an education. So again, that is one of the major reasons that we see, and we want to ensure that we correct that.
Yeah. Terrence Hayes, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Where can people find you?
People can find me on social media, Terrence L. Hayes on Instagram. You can find me at VA PressSec on X as well. But again, please visit the website, va.gov, to find out all information when it comes to your benefits and care.
The brother gave you his personal social media. That means he's serious, y'all. He wants y'all to get in touch with it. So, folks don't do that. They're not serious and they're not about service. Terrence Hayes, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Good to see you, brother.
It's an honor, sir.
Proud of you, man. Keep it going. Glad they're doing good. Young brother doing this work, y'all, on this anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We are live here at the Executive Office of the President, and we're speaking with a whole bunch, obviously, as you can see. I'm glad you all are staying with us, with a number of individuals who work here in this White House, work in the Executive Office of the President. And as you'll notice, no one is engaging in any partisan politics. You really can't do that. But we need to know what too many good things are happening that we just don't know about. I didn't know 1.4 million people employed in this country work for a black business. Didn't know that. Had no idea about that. And I'm super black. Didn't know. So this is informing me so that I can inform you and we can all inform each other. What the brother just shared with us about the VA and what they're doing. And we know what some of our veterans have gone through. And that's real talk. So the VA is very important. Like I said, if I was president, VA have all the money in the world. They'd be after me for giving it too much money. Because why you give the VA all $10 billion? But that's what the VA needs, because to me, it is sometimes heartbreaking that, the brethren find themselves in these situations. And I wonder And I know you're supposed to go, but since you're still sitting here, what about jobs, man? Is that a thing that, I mean, can veterans go in and get jobs? I know sometimes
Yeah.
folks be kind of funny about that, but
Yeah.
where is that at? Is that, are we better at that?
Yeah, I believe we are. I mean, we have many jobs, especially federal jobs, where veterans get preference.
Okay, good.
And that way they're able to not necessarily get the handout, but to get a hand up.
Right,
and we
right,
know
right.
that veterans have unique skill sets that can really position all businesses across the board to be very successful. So we encourage you to hire a veteran at all costs.
Indeed. All right. So the woman in charge is sending you away, brother. Good to see you, man.
My brother. Thank you
Terrence
for-
Hayes. God bless you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Veterans Affairs. As we are here in the White Hizzle, I think we're gonna bring our next guest in. Keith Washington is acting as my producer. I don't know what he's doing. He's doing a lot of run. I saw him socializing in the hallway. You know a lot of people here? Okay. Hi, everybody. Now, you all are going to absolutely love our next guest, because this is an issue. This is a topic that is obviously near and dear to all of us and all of our hearts. With everything that's been going on with folk claiming to be doing things that they haven't really been doing, but they want us to think they've been doing stuff they've been doing, but they haven't been doing it. And so we're looking forward to this conversation with our next guest. Again, we are live here in the Executive Office Building, MIP, at the EOP, on the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, and July 2nd, 1964. Also, this is the 99th birthday celebration for Medgar Evers. The Civil Rights Act was passed on Medgar Evers' birthday, the first birthday he had after he passed away. So that's historic unto itself. Joining us now is I tell you, you're gonna love this, the executive director of the White House Initiative on HBCUs. How long much we don't spend so much time, people. I know we can keep you for an hour because this is wonderful, the work you do.
You can keep me for an hour.
You hear this?
I can talk about HBCUs for 2 days if you want me to.
Did you go to HBCU?
Of course.
Where'd you go?
The real HU, Hampton.
Oh, no.
I knew you were going to go there.
No.
Hampton.
But
But actually, this is the real HU, right? The two of
That's
us.
right. That's
Hampton
right. That's
Howard.
what
We're all in this together.
And I love Hampton. I got some Hampton family, so we love Hampton.
Right. It's
Well, how are
all
you?
in the family.
Deidre Trent, folks, how are you?
I'm great.
So tell us about, like, on a day like today, what are you doing? What are you working on?
So this morning I started out at a conference in Maryland, really talking about HBCUs, the value of HBCUs to our country. It was a conference with philanthropy, and so, thanking them for their support as well as helping them understand the value that our universities play to the nation and have played to the nation. Also talking about the president's agenda and some of the things that we've accomplished.
Well, talk to us about that, because is it correct to say that more money has gone to support HBCUs in this administration than in any other? Is that an accurate statement?
I would even venture to go any further and say that more money has been invested in HBCUs under this administration than the former administrations combined.
Wow.
We're
All of
talking
them
about
combined.
historic over $16 billion just from 2021 to 2023. And the reason we can calculate that is because this administration has really taken on a whole of government approach. So not just the Department of Education's responsibility or role to fund these schools, but it's the entire federal government's responsibility to ensure that these schools have opportunities to participate in federally sponsored programs. So whether that's through research, whether it's through programs, whether it's through grants, we are working with our federal partners. We have 37 federal partners, federal agencies that we work with on a day-to-day basis to ensure that our HBCUs are supported and also are able to compete.
And this is pretty much happening out of this building as an administration. These are not things that we've had to go every single one to get Congress to do. This is something that can happen.
Well, I will say that Congress passed a law in 2020. It's called the Partners Act, and it requires all of our federal agencies to provide me, my office, with a report, an annual report outlining how they're going to work with HBCUs, how they're going to make more opportunity, create more opportunity for HBCUs, and how they're going to remove barriers that HBCUs face when they're competing for federal dollars.
That's very, very important.
That's very important, but I will tell you that even though we have the Partners Act, and it is this administration that has kind of set the tone through the president's equity agenda. HBCUs are not sidelined in any way. We are central to what this administration is doing across the federal government.
I mean, there was a time when there was barely an HBCU that was a beneficiary of a research grant that was considered an R&D school. Now, a lot of them are.
Right. So
and folks, you don't, again, R&D schools don't come out on the cabbage patches either. There's investment.
Right.
You just don't wake up one morning with an R&D school. Their investment, their grants, all of that.
And a part of what the approach to this administration has been to ensure that we currently have, under the Carnegie classification for research and development schools, there's R1, which are the highest. So those are the Ivy Leagues, the MITs, and all. We have 12 R2s that are next to the R1s, and so
12 R2 HBCUs.
Right. So this administration has really focused on making sure that we are supporting our R2s in a way, supporting HBCUs across the board, but supporting our R2s in a way that they might be able to reach the R1 status. The one thing that this president has always said and consistently says is that an investment in our HBCUs is an investment in our nation and in our future. And when we look at this investment, it's not just about wrongs of the past, because we all know HBCUs historically have been underfunded and undervalued, but it's also about our national competitiveness. It's also about innovation. It's also about national security. And so when this administration has taken on supporting HBCUs, it's the right thing to do, but beyond that, it's important for our future.
Are there any HBCU R1s?
None. Howard was an R1, but they lost it. I think they will be R1 in the next, probably within the next year, if not less. Howard and Morgan are really close, I think.
But again, at the end of the day, these are opportunities for our students.
These are absolutely opportunities for our students. And so when we're talking about, for instance, under this administration, for the first time ever in the history of this country, HBCUs are leading university-affiliated research centers, which are designated by the Department of Defense. It's called a UARC. Howard is leading a group of 7 other HBCUs. They're doing tactical autonomy research for the Department of Defense Air Force. But these students will also have an opportunity to participate in that research from across our HBCUs. The same is true. The president signed a CHIPS and Science Act. We're working with a network of universities now to make sure that our schools are participating in the research as well as the workforce. And our students are being trained to ensure that they meet the demands of the microelectronic industry now.
Yeah, that's very important. Private sector. What's going on? Are you engaged there too?
We are engaged with the private sector. We have a number of partnerships that we're working with now. One of is actually also with the CHIPS work. We're also engaged with private
Right.
sector there too. Obviously, the industry is a big player in this.
Mhm.
We have a partnership that we have now with the golf industry. We all know that that's like a $200 billion industry. We brought all of the commissioners to the table and asked, and we said we want our students to get involved in the business of golf.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
not just playing,
Right.
but we need, we need media folks, we need our lawyers there, we need our accountants there. And so we do have an MOU where we're working with them, and there's some things that are really going on that are positive, where our students are being able to have some internships as well.
Yeah, that's important
We
too.
have a couple also, we have a partnership with HBCUs in LA. I'm sure you're familiar with that organization. We have a partnership there. We have two of our students who are actually going to Paris. Two of the students who were a part of that program this summer are actually going to Paris to the Olympics.
To the
So there's a
Olympics.
lot of exciting things going on.
Still, even today, for those who may not understand the importance of our HBCUs, the majority of our students still get their degrees and their advanced degrees from HBCUs. Most Black PhDs
Come from an HBC.
come from an HBCU. So
Right.
this is HBCUs are still more than relevant and urgent, if not more so.
Absolutely. We know today 85% of our federal judges are HBCU graduates. We know that 75% of military leaders were HBCU graduates. We know that our doctors and our dentists, Black doctors and dentists, about 70% of them are HBCU grads. Over 50% of the Black teachers and engineers were HBCU grads.
Yeah.
40% of Congress, Black CBC, HBCU grads, and 100% of our VPs is an HBCU grad. Vice President of the United States is graduate.
Yeah, she went to the real HU.
She went to the other HU. The only mistake she made. No, I'm kidding. I am totally
Did you pledge?
kidding.
Are you
I
green?
did not.
You
No.
didn't pledge. Okay. So what's next on the agenda for your office? These are great accomplishments. What other things, other benchmarks you're looking to achieve?
So we are focused on 4 key areas in our office, and mostly research, right? So we talked about the CHIPS in Science. We have a network of 28 HBCUs that have come to the table where we're going to come together as a network to put in proposals for research and workforce opportunities within that bucket of money. It's like $11 billion out there.
Okay.
We have a new agency called ARPA-H. It's Advancing Research.
Right.
Sorry, it's health. It was developed after COVID to ensure that everybody has access to good health care.
Mhm.
We're putting together some proposals for the ARPA-H fund. We are working closely with our 1890s. I don't know if you all saw, but the Secretary of Education and the Secretary of Agriculture sent a letter to the 16 states where we have our land grant universities showing where they had miscalculated or
Right.
underfunded our HBCU. So we're continuing to push that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have that I'm working with the Department of the Air Force on. It is a mitigating bias in our data sets. One of the things that we know as we're talking about AI and machine learning, that there's a lot of bias that's built in that.
Mm.
And so we are working with our HBCUs to lead an effort to look at federal data to see how we can mitigate that bias and across the federal government. So those are the 4 big things that we'll be finishing out this term
Okay.
with and going into the next term. And then we also have our HBCU conference, which is the biggest conference of HBCU gatherings. That is September 15th through the 19th. We will be in Philadelphia this year.
Can I come?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to be looking for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Good.
Can I go? You gonna let me go? Okay. Person in charge over here. Folks, Deidre Trent of Hampton University. That's all right. But it's not, I don't hate on Hampton. It's cool. Executive Director of the White House HBCU Initiative. This is great news. Will they get any more money this year?
We're working hard. We're working hard to make sure that we get money from the CHIPS and some of the programs that we talked about. that I
Right,
just
right,
talked
right.
about. So I'm pushing.
This is work that has to continue. All right, so we can go to HBCUs and graduate and get us some black jobs. So that's what we got to do. And we appreciate.
I appreciate you allowing me to share my black job.
That's right. That's
in
what
the
I'm
White
saying.
House,
You and your black
from
job.
the White House.
That's right. This is a black job, and one of the blackest ones because your sister's dealing with the HBCUs.
Right.
We are all thankful for you. God bless you.
Well, thank you, sir.
And I know you, that a lot of folk who work behind the scenes administration, people don't know, but everybody knows about this office because so many of us have been to HBCUs,
Right.
and it's just triumphant
Right.
when we can get something done for our
Right.
HBCU.
That's right.
So
That's
we
right. It's
appreciate you.
community.
What were you
all
doing
that
before this?
Before this, I was with the state, Virginia State. I was actually Secretary of Education for
Okay.
a while, and I
Yeah.
went to George Mason and was Chief of Staff there and came over here.
Okay. You enjoying this, aren't you?
I love this. This is the job that I would do without getting paid.
Yeah,
This
for
is
free.
that job for me. Yes.
Yeah. And something like this has to continue.
Right. Right.
You know, it has to, y'all.
It has to
It has to continue. We can't play.
Especially today.
Yeah,
Especially in today. So
yeah, yeah. We
we'll
can't.
leave it there.
We can't play, y'all. We need our HBCUs. They need, because here's the other thing, and I know we got to go. What Sister Trent is talking about, the R1s, as she said, the Ivy Leagues have what you call endowments,
Right.
and that makes all the difference in the world. So they have resources beyond, I mean, the tuition that the students pay is a drop in the bucket. But most of our HBCUs, they still are dependent upon tuition because it's hard for us to build endowments.
That is exactly right.
You have endowments, then you have the money to have more PhD programs.
Right.
I'm starting my PhD this fall, but not in HBCU because, as you know, none of our HBCUs have a PhD in theology.
Right.
We all have the D-Min. You got to have at least $20, $25 million in the bank
Correct.
to get an accredited PhD office. Now, HBCUs have other PhDs, but nobody has one in theology. There's no PhD in theology at an HBCU after all these years.
Mm-hmm.
Howard was trying to get one, couldn't raise the money. So when people always look surprised when I say that. We didn't know that, because you see Reverend Doctor.
Right.
Most Reverend Doctors are D-Mins because
Right.
that's the terminal degree
Mm-hmm.
to be a pastor. Hampton, School of Religion, D-Min.
Right.
But is venerated as these HBCU divinity schools are, because we don't have that endowment
That's
money.
right. That's right.
So y'all, this is where we at. So yeah,
And if I could just end on this one point, when we look at our schools and we compare the opportunities that the predominantly white institutions have had over the years, and actually being awarded federal dollar to do research. I think what people don't really understand is that there is a portion of that money that is that they are able to keep for the administrative cost. And so if you're getting if you're doing $200 million in federal research, you can keep a certain percentage of that. Sometimes it's
Right.
up to 50%. So if you're keeping that for administrative costs, then all the money that you raise otherwise go
Right.
to your endowment.
that's right.
So
That's
we have been left out of that, and a part of what this administration has been trying to do is make sure that there's equity in how we're doing our funding our schools, as well as opportunities for our schools.
Our HBCUs provide jobs in the community. They provide, they're the cohesion
Right. For the nucleus of the
of
community.
the whole piece. And as many of you know, I just shared so you can know, my mother's home was right smack in the middle of Fisk, Tennessee State and Meharry. That's where I
Mhm.
grew up. On every camp. My whole family either went to one or all of those schools,
Right.
but everybody worked there,
Right.
and it was hard. There was nothing else to do in Nashville but go to school.
Right.
You went to Fisk, Tennessee State and Meharry. I mean, it was hard not to do that.
Right. Right.
And so she's doing the Lord's work, y'all. We appreciate her. Dr. Deetra Trent here with us with she's the director of the White House Initiative on HBCUs. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
Keep
so
up the
much.
great
I
work.
appreciate it.
And we forgive you for being the other HU. We forgive you
I
for that.
appreciate you.
But we all do go, all as preachers, we go to the Hampton Ministers Conference though. So we go down there. So
Okay.
that's important.
That's very important. It's the biggest conference of ministers
That's
in
right.
the country, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
All right. Well,
Good to
it's
see
great
you.
see again.
Good to
Thank
see you.
so
All right,
much.
be in touch. And anything we need to do to get the word out, folks, this is the real deal right here. This is important work. So
Thank you.
keep us posted on all
I
you're
will
doing.
do.
All right. And let me come to the conference. Y'all gonna let me come to the conference?
We're expecting you at the conference.
Okay. She took her mint and nod her head. She was thinking about it. I'm good though. I'm good. Okay, I can come. And Roderick is gonna let me go. So
I think we're good.
good.
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you
care.
very much. All right. Folks, we again are here in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. I think what we're going to do, because we got a little time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new stream, folks. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a new stream in a minute. So just come back here in a little while, and then we'll talk about some of these other important things that are happening on this 60th anniversary. This today, 60 years ago today, the Civil Rights Act was passed, Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, you know, it's getting on up there in terms of time. And the years are going by. I was born 2 years later. You were born when the Civil Rights Act passed. I think you were. You were born. Come say hi to the people, Keith. Ain't nobody seen you in a minute, man. Y'all know Brother Keith. And he don't have his tie on though. You know we in the White House. Where's your tie?
I'll put it on right after this.
But you on camera now. What you gonna put it on? There's no point in putting it on. Have you seen this document about all the things that key economic statistics for Black Americans? 2.4 million more African Americans have jobs. Unemployment rate for African Americans reached its lowest level on record in 2023, and it's now 6.1%, down from 9.3%. It was 9.3% when Biden took office. Yeah, so there weren't that many Black jobs before Biden got here. All the Black jobs that people had, Black jobs, Black jobs. The Black-white unemployment gap fell to its lowest level on record, going back more than 50 years. That was last year in 2020. Remember that, because it literally happened. We were live on the air and we got the news, the jobs report, and it was like everything had shrunk. The share of Black Americans with a job is at its pre-pandemic level, near its highest level in 2 decades. The employment population ratio is 59.1%. Black families are more likely to own their home now than they were in 2019. The home ownership rate is 46.34%. Share of Black families who own businesses has doubled since 2019. Wealth among African Americans is up a record 60% since 2019 after accounting for inflation. The Black-white wealth gap is at its narrowest level in 20 years, though it remains a long-standing challenge. Of course it does. So those are just a few things we want to share with you. We've got some more from this document we'll share in terms of what some of the accomplishments have been. You glad to be here in the White House?
Always glad to be at the White House.
I know that's right. Keith Washington here, y'all, as he's made some Black history. Not only has he worked with me on the show over the years, and he'll be with me at the convention. I know we're not supposed to talk about the campaign, but I'm just saying we're at the convention. When we go to the convention, Keith will be by my side. And you all remember that Keith was the first chief of staff for our Black political party that we had in the District of Columbia, the Umoja Party. The most recent Black political party to have ballot status in any jurisdiction. And I remember people would say, well, nobody's gonna vote for a party with an African name. And then a few years later, we elected President Obama. So you can probably take some of the credit for that, Keith, because we had a Black political party with African names. That's what's up. We are here in the Executive Office Building on this anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. and also the anniversary of Meg Evers' birthday, the 99th year of his birth. We'll have a big, spoke with the family this morning, and I want to remind you, if you have not already, check out my post on my social media, at Minister on Instagram and on Twitter, and on TikTok. I think I put it on TikTok. I'll probably do it now when we take a break, if I haven't, where you will see for the first time Merle Evers' reaction to receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, that this president, whose office we're in, this president gave that medal posthumously to Meg Evers because he gave his life for our right to vote. That's why it is sacred. That's why we do not take it for granted. Everybody should vote, right?
Everybody should vote.
Okay. Keith agrees. Everybody should vote, so we want to do that. Folks, we're going to slide off of this live stream. We're going to start a new one in a few moments. Check us back out in about 10 minutes or so, and we'll continue to be live from the White House.